Hello and welcome to another managerial special from the Irons Football Podcast. I'm Craig Savage, and with me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Cody. This is the 8th Championship managerial change, and this time we are going to West Bromwich Albion. They have confirmed that Valerien Ismael has left his position as head coach. Assistant head coach Adam Murray has also departed the Hawthorns. We'd like to place on record its thanks to Valerian and Adam for their efforts and wish them well in the future. The process of recruiting a new head coach is now underway. An appointment will be announced in due course. West Brom at the moment currently in 5th in the Championship, and it feels like a bit of deja vu with West Brom.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're referring to the situation a couple of years ago with Darren Moore, where they were in a pretty similar league position. I guess the difference maybe on this occasion is that the fans have a huge bugbear with the style of football being played, which has been very defensive. It's been seen to be very cautious, very unambitious, I think is the word, for a team that are supposed to be chasing promotion. I mean, it's evidenced by their stats across the season, isn't it? They've got the joint best defensive record in the league, which we've got to put a positive on Valerien Ismael there, because they had some games last season in the Premier League where they conceded goals galore. So that's a positive. However, they've scored 34 goals in 29 games, despite a depth of attacking talent. Obviously, they've just spent on a big money, proven Championship goal scorer who's then got injured straight away. They had a player on loan in Jordan Hugill for the first half of the year who barely got a game. Now he's gone to Cardiff and scored on his debut in January. So there are a lot of questions going forward. They've scored less than one a game away from home. At home, they're pretty solid, but again, a few too many draws. And I think the word that we've used throughout our prediction shows this season for them is, yes, they're efficient. They're doing the job. They're near the top of the league, but they're pretty uninspiring, and I wouldn't really like to have a season ticket there, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and just looking at his record, 29 games, 12 wins, 9 draws, and 8 defeats. And you look at his recent run, especially in the league, 1 win in 6, 4 of them are defeats. Would you say that Valerien Ismael, considering he had a brilliant second half of the season at Barnsley, do you think he's been found out now?
I don't know if found out's the right term, because he did a brilliant job at Lask in a different country before that. I just think the styles didn't match. I mean, to be fair, we don't often get things right here. It's something we alluded to in the summer. You said that you didn't think he'd get anywhere near his contract. I said it's going to be a very different style, and I don't think he'll get to see out the season. And I mean, you said they wouldn't make the top 2 in that manager special. I said they'd struggle to make the playoffs, and both of those things have happened. It never looked like it was going to be a marriage made in heaven. And that's the one thing we said. For a brilliant job that Ismael did at Barnsley last year, they played quick, direct, counter-attacking football. They were aggressive when pressing, but they were never the most attacking side. They were founded on their defensive principles and the way they worked off the ball. And that didn't really marry up with what West Brom wanted. And West Brom are a side that yo-yo between the top 2 divisions. When they're in the Championship, they expect to be dominant. I don't think it's helped that the last 2 Championship managers for West Brom were Slaven Bilic and Darren Moore, who were both attacking managers. They played excellent football under both. And obviously they were singing Bilic's name the game before Ismael went, or the last home game before. So I think there were a number of mitigating factors that didn't help him. He did have a big job to shore up the defence, which was one of the weaknesses of the team last season. But I just didn't ever think it was going to work. And you said the same. So I don't think we can say we're hugely surprised. And I don't think we can say he's been found out. I'm just surprised that he got a 4-year deal and that West Brom have paid him and his assistant off for 3.5.
Do you think it's the expectancy for West Brom to obviously be up there, considering Barnsley, when he was at Barnsley, when he took over, they were near the bottom of the table, and then obviously got into the playoffs, and you could probably say he overachieved.
Definitely.
Probably too quickly, considering there were off the field problems as well. Sam Johnston, obviously he was number 1, didn't play for a couple of games. There was something internal, and you started to feel that the writing was on the wall for Ismael.
Yeah, and there were as you mentioned, there were those little fractures coming out of the club all the time. I mean, to address your first part, you're absolutely right. He massively overachieved with Barnsley. And that's why he maybe got escalated into this job quickly, because it was an easy appointment. But as we've said before, we talked about it even when teams go up to second in the league in prediction shows. It's very different when you've got that pressure and expectancy on you. And it seems to be something that they struggled with a little bit. I know he's played for massive clubs, but if you look at Adam Murray, who came with him, who's really coached at the Championship or lower levels, not really been someone pushing for the Premier League a lot. I'm saying for some of the backroom staff too. But yeah, in the club, there's been little bits coming out for a while now. I mentioned the Hugo loan that got, he got bought in, barely played, then got recalled and has now gone elsewhere. The weird timing and release of Robert Snodgrass seemed a little bit odd for someone who's got that quality on the ball when they weren't looking too creative. Obviously, the Daryl DK money. I did say by the time he next plays a game in one of the recent predictions, Valerian Ismael won't be his manager, which has been proven right. And he is going to be a big part of their future. But yeah, it's always going to be it's coming close to the end when there's those little fractures off the pitch. There's those little things getting leaked out of the dressing room. It clearly didn't look tight-knit. And there was a huge disconnect between the fans and the club and the players on the pitch, which I think is something that the new chief executive has alluded to, which I'm sure we'll be talking about soon.
Yeah, I'll get on to that in a second. I just want to go back to the style of play for West Brom. As you alluded to, obviously, Ismael was very direct. It was very boring, in my opinion. Considering I don't mind a bit of direct football, but watching the games that have been on Friday night on Sky, it has been uneventful. But then they play different style with the previous managers on, like a Slaven Bilic or a Darren Moore. So what should be West Brom's style of play?
Well, this is the thing that I find a bit harder about West Brom is that, as you say, they haven't got a consistent pattern, even going back over 5-6 years. The end of last year, we had Sam Allardyce. Before that, it was Slaven Bilic. Before that, it was Darren Moore. There seems to be a real lack of leadership at the top, which will, again, probably link to what's coming next in this episode. But I don't know what their identity is. And I think that's the thing that the fans find the hardest. And I think that's why there is a disconnect, because they don't know what style they're going for. I don't think there were any secrets to Valerian Ismael. I think we knew what we were going to get when he took over, and that's proven to be the case, albeit it was a bit more exciting at Barnsley. It just hasn't clicked here. But then after Sam Allardyce, do you think that's the route they're going down now? When you look at who's the favourite, the heavy favourite to get the job next, you would suggest they're continuing in that mould. But I really don't know what their identity is, and I completely sympathise with the fans who are a little bit frustrated or bewildered at the style of football and the lack of leadership at the club, because it's just completely different turns at every point, and it can't help the consistency of the squad either.
Exactly that. And let's get on to off the field again. Not long after the announcement of Valerien Ismael's departure was another statement, and that was Ron Gourlay is now the chief executive officer. Gourlay arrived obviously during summer. Now he's been appointed chief executive officer. He has experience, especially senior roles at Manchester United, Reading and Chelsea. Where do you feel this is going?
I don't know. My hope is, if I'm being optimistic for Baggies fans, is that it's genuine leadership, someone who knows football and working at big football clubs, creating a structure that can work. Because obviously Valerian Ismael and Adam Murray came in, and that was a lot of faith put in them. They let him bring in Alex Mowat as well. Obviously Daryl Deke earlier in the month. It was a core of Valerian Ismael coaches and signings. So there was a lot of faith placed in him. They need some leadership so that these managerial changes aren't quite as harsh and don't lead to such a turnover and a change within the club. So I hope it's a positive. Obviously, you could have some cynical sides as well, which is when he was CEO at Chelsea, he oversaw a number of managerial changes, although most CEOs do at Chelsea, it's got to be said. But the one thing he has said, to be fair to him in his statement, is talking about the disconnect between the fans, the community and the club and the players. And although he knows that the long-term aim is to be in the Premier League, that will naturally come if you fix the other side of it. So I'm hoping it will be a positive for them. He's obviously got an immediate job to appoint the head coach, and regardless of what he says in his interviews and regardless of what he does behind the scenes, he's going to be judged on who he picks for this managerial role, which the statement suggests he's going to be in charge of, and how they perform, in their new role.
Is this coincidence that Gourlay is appointed chief executive officer and literally 10, 15 minutes before Ismael gets or after Ismael gets the sack?
No, because we saw yesterday, didn't we? I mean, we were talking about it when we were recording our weekend predictions earlier. We saw yesterday that he's turning up to take training, but he's fighting for his future. So there were clearly these discussions going on at the club, and it was probably just waiting for contracts to be signed and things to be aligned. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an appointment pretty soon. I think they'd have someone in mind. And judging by the fact that there's one really heavy favourite for the job, I think we might see someone very soon.
Looking at what the odds are at the moment, Steve Bruce is the heavy favourite at the moment. Is it one of those? Do West Brom need an experienced manager, or do you think they should go somewhere different and go somewhere new and that hasn't been in the Championship and let them have a go? Because it's not like they're fighting for their lives down the bottom, but they are in 5th place, and obviously it's very tight at the moment. The appointment has to be spot on.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, even since we started recording this episode about 9 or 10 minutes ago, Steve Bruce has gone from 1 to 2 on to 1 to 4 on. So I think we've got our answer probably, and it might be imminent. But I would suspect after the debacle of the 4-year contract for Valerien Ismael, what will happen is whether it's Steve Bruce or another experienced manager, because the ones at the top, the likes of Mowbray and Neil, are seasoned Championship managers, are probably going to be put on a short-term deal to the end of the season. I think that rules Mowbray out. But
will Mowbray actually want to go back? He was a manager back in 2007.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think in a short term that's going to happen. My prediction would be, look, Bruce is such a heavy favourite. It seems weird that there'd be nothing in it. So I think he'll probably come in on an interim till the end of the season. They obviously tried that approach with Allardyce last year in the Premier League. It's something they've done before as a club. And then maybe in the summer, if it doesn't work out, as you basically said, till the end of the season's a free swing. They're not in any danger. They've got an experienced manager to hopefully come in, see them into the playoffs, and then can they produce a miracle? And let's be fair, I'd say 2nd place is still up for grabs. They're only 8 points away. No one's running away with it. I think it's Fulham and one other. And it could still be West Brom if an experienced manager comes in and delivers. So I think Steve Bruce to the end of the season, while not inspiring the fans, while possibly not fixing that disconnect, would be a sensible short-term solution. I think the question then is, if the 80-90% chance that he doesn't take them up in the summer, who's going to get a long-term appointment? I think the fans will forgive it if it's only a deal till the end of the season, because they'll know that there's a longer-term strategy. If it's on a long-term deal, I think if Bruce comes in for anything more than a 6-month contract, I think there might be a bit of uproar.
Do you think it's a bit frustrating for West Brom fans that we've seen this, what 2-3 times now, that they sack someone during the season and then they hire someone interim to the end of the season? Surely that's at least 2-3 times too many now.
Well, yeah, and I think the thing that's frustrating about it is on previous instances, it hasn't really worked. I think that's the biggest problem with it. It's all right if someone comes in, you have success. And I think the reason they keep doing that is because they're deferring having a long-term strategy. There doesn't seem to be a long-term plan. We've mentioned it in many facets. So look, for whichever manager comes in, it's a free swing. They come in for 6 months. If they get them promoted, they're a hero. They get a new contract, whatever else, if that is Steve Bruce, as it looks like it may be. And if not, the club's got to rebuild again. But Ron Gourlay then by the summer has to know exactly what he wants the club to be and exactly who he's going to appoint. Because otherwise, as you say, the fans have every right to get frustrated.
If you had the choice right now, forgetting Steve Bruce, if you had the choice to be the next West Brom head coach, not manager, because they'd like a head coach over there, who would you pick?
On this occasion, because of the form they're in, I probably would go for a quick pick-me-up like that. So I don't... Look, Steve Bruce, for whatever said about him, and I know there's a lot of baggage that's come from that recent Newcastle stint, he's one of the most successful Championship managers of all time. So we've got to bear that in mind. It's not a disaster as much as his persona or his media perception after his last job goes against him. I would go for a short-term appointment for now, because I don't think there are any great managers out there. So, I mean, there's a risk of John Terry looks like one that they might is sort of an outsider, as someone who's been talked about for these sorts of jobs for a while. You've got the likes of Gareth Ainsworth and Darren Ferguson, who you might argue deserve that step up to the next level. But the short-term safe bet is to go, you know, for a Bruce, back to Sam Allardyce, to Neil Warnock even. I don't think it will be him, by the way, but just to make you smile. And the other one in there we've got to mention is, I know he's quite long odds, but Slaven Bilic to go back. The fans have been singing his name. You can't really go wrong. I would predict now, Craig, as unlikely as it is, that Steve Bruce will take the job till the end of the season. And then if they don't go up, Slaven Bilic is back in the summer.
I don't think Steve Bruce will have a short-term deal. I think he will want at least a 1 or 2 year deal. So, yeah, I can see Steve Bruce taking it. Former Birmingham manager, so he obviously knows the area. If I wanted short-term, I will have to go experience. I wouldn't go Big Sam again. I really wouldn't. If you really want experience, you would say your Warnocks or your McCarthy's. Yeah, to me, it's Steve Bruce. I'll be brutally honest. But Steve Bruce will not do a short-term deal.
Sorry to turn this, Craig. If Steve Bruce gets longer than a half-a-year deal, do you think there's uproar with the fans?
To be honest, I think they will want a different style of football. I generally can't see Slaven Bilic coming back. I don't know. I know it's your choice, but I can't see Slaven Bilic coming back. I think it was a bit of it didn't end on the right terms. And he was harshly sacked, in my opinion.
Very harsh. It was after a City draw, wasn't it? Away from home.
Away from home at City. And then they didn't really spend the money in the summer.
Yeah.
John Terry's not going because he just joined Chelsea. He's just gone back to Chelsea. Yeah, I generally can't think of anyone else. It has to be someone in the Championship. No, there's no. I think we've got to the point of the season where sacking the man now is probably just as criminal to do, because the ones that maybe Chris Hughton, come back. Chris Hughton, why not? Chris Hughton.
Not even in the list.
I know. No, he's not even in the list. I know, but you never know. I don't know. If you want to do a short term, do Chris Hughton.
And he's had 2 or 3 promotions from here as well, the same as Bruce. Yeah. So they're not the worst options in the world.
No, he obviously took Brighton up, took Newcastle up. So obviously Chris Wilder would have been the easiest candidate if he obviously didn't take the Middlesbrough job. But they're okay candidates, but there's good experience. I wouldn't go for someone that's new. I really wouldn't go for that. And those are our thoughts on the sacking of Valerian Ismael at West Bromwich Albion. Do you agree with what we said or disagree? Let us know in the comments. And who do you think will be the next West Brom head coach? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at Honest Football 3. And we'll see you next time.